Most shelter dogs beg for food, for freedom, for notice. But King Charles didn't beg. He commanded silence, and the silence turned into legend. The constant backdrop of rescues is noise, barking, pushing, fear braided into frantic movement. Each kennel becomes a chorus of demands, where survival is performed every hour. In that condition, dominance normally arrives loud, teeth, lunges, visible scars as trophies. King Charles entered into that grammar and rewired it. He did not perform. He arrived as a presence that the yard had to account for. Dogs that once shouted to secure space flattened their posture when he passed. Anxious animals oriented around his stillness. This was not bravado or theatrics. It was a socially observable shift that changed the ordinary rules of contest in that shelter. His method is observable. The yard records the change. Evidence over opinion. Repeat and verify. This matters to rescues worldwide. This can be watched and measured. When you scan kennels, you expect power to show as physical blockade. A dog jams a corridor, hoards at feeding, or forces constant eye contact until rivals fold. King Charles did not erect a barricade of posture to claim authority. Instead, his influence formed through patterned activity. He moved in calibrated ways, and tiny choices accumulated. A measured step into a disputed lane, a deliberate pause in proximity, an unobtrusive touch that rerouted a surge. Those acts, repeated over time, enforced statistical adjustments in how others timed their moves. Followers appeared not because he called them, but because his behavior created safer payoff structures in the yard. The yard records the change. Evidence over opinion. Repeat and verify. The earliest circulating clips are puzzling because they show outcomes rather than spectacle. A tussle will explode, and then, in the middle of chaos, Charles steps between, sometimes with a paw resting on a shoulder, sometimes with a slow repositioning that interrupts trajectory. Aggression downgrades almost immediately. For viewers unfamiliar with social signaling, the effect looks like magic. For those who study behavior, those interruptions are information-dense. Pauses, orientation, and minimal tactile cues that other animals read as regulatory signals. The first freeze events are raw data that document influence, not imagination. This can be watched and measured. His method is observable. The yard records the change. Evidence over opinion. Repeat and verify. A common early reaction was to hunt for simple labels. What breed is he? What lineage explains his look? Breed is morphology shorthand, and it fails to answer the visible social phenomena. The viral poll was not about fur color or head shape. It was a repeatable sequence of social interventions that created consistent outcomes. To explain King Charles, separate genetic taxonomy from interaction dynamics. Breeds describe potential frames. Behavior supplies causal mechanisms. It is the latter that explains why a yard changes its minutes when he appears, not the former. This matters to rescues worldwide. This can be watched and measured. His method is observable. The yard records the change. Evidence over opinion. Repeat and verify. Watch the compiled footage and you see operational constants. Mealtime choreography changes when he is near. Paths become predictable. Tension diminishes in zones he occupies. Social animals economize aggression when reliable arbitrators reduce uncertainty. Charles functions as that arbitrator. He does not remove risk through brute elimination. He reduces the marginal utility of conflict by introducing predictable consequences and timing. The yard reorganizes itself to minimize costly fights because his presence institutionalizes a calmer equilibrium. This can be watched and measured. His method is observable. The yard records the change. Evidence over opinion. Repeat and verify. This matters to rescues worldwide. Leadership needs tests. Every system has challengers. Rocky arrived shaped by the yard's previous rules, muscle, history, and willingness to enforce claims. Their exchanges were not camera stunts, but contests with reputational consequences. Rocky pushed, prodded, escalated, seeking to measure whether Charles would yield. Charles responded not with reckless force, but with selective redirection, timing the sequence so the challenger exhausted aggression against predictable resistance. The exchange resolved reputational uncertainty in a way that the rest of the pack could evaluate and update. This can be watched and measured. His method is observable. The yard records the change. Evidence over opinion. Repeat and verify. The core of Charles's method was pedagogical rather than punitive. Redirect, hold a boundary. Let the challenger observe the consequence and then withdraw. This is not humiliation. It is the imposition of reliable rules. Social networks stabilize around leaders who provide predictable enforcement because predictability lowers the cost of living together. Observers in the yard adjusted behavior because the new rules reduced the risk of sudden, costly fights. The effect is durable. Once the system learns the logic, it prefers structured order over ad hoc violence. This can be watched and measured. His method is observable. The yard records the change. Evidence over opinion. Repeat and verify. When short sequences traveled beyond the yard and onto Douyin and global platforms, viewers recognized the same pattern that the animals on the ground already knew. Clips were remixed and stitched into narratives that invited analysis. Trainers and ethologists took interest because the footage offered repeated instances of a social technology. Pawble chose King Charles not because he is cute or viral, but because his footage is analyzable. Most viral animals are one-off stunts or quirky personality clips. Charles is different. His interventions recur, the reactions are consistent, and the social outcome is measurable. That combination allows a content channel to do something rare, translate viral footage into teachable insights about social dynamics in stressed groups. For rescue practitioners, academics, and viewers curious about animal cognition, those are high-value data points, not mere spectacle. This can be watched and measured. His method is observable. The yard records the change. Legend formation often follows storytelling, but in this case, the empirical thread precedes myth. The yard reorganized, challengers recalibrated, viewers spread the clips. That chain links observation to cultural significance. King Charles matters because he reveals a vector of leadership that is rarely captured on camera. Influence created by calibrated presence rather than blunt force. For Pawble, for shelters watching, and for audiences who study behavior, he is not just viral content. He is an accessible case study in how social systems can shift when a predictable regulator appears. This can be watched and measured,